Hello viewers and welcome back to Media 13. This is last month I watched the February 2022 edition. Real quick before I start with this one, let's just give a big round of applause because with this being the 4th episode, that makes this the most consistent series I've ever had on this channel. Honestly, consistency is never something I've really vibed with, but we're getting there. Unless we're counting the Media 13 Awards, which has been a thing for 3 years now, soon. As is always, if you want to quickly check out my rating system and how I rank each film, you can check the unlisted video in the description of this video or in the last month I watched playlist that will give you the brief explanation of everything, including some controversial examples. Jumping straight into things, on the 1st of February I watched 2002's Phone Booth starring Colin Farrell. Now this is a movie that I constantly saw like an advert for on my Daredevil DVD back when I had that. So it was really interesting to finally watch it, and it was actually pretty good. I thought it was a very decent thriller. I gave it a 3.5, a strong start for the month. The strong start did not last because on the 1st I also watched Law Abiding Citizen, which was a film recommendation from a friend of mine, Scott, but didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. I thought it was a very much a surface level film. There was nothing really to enjoy about it in my eyes in terms of what I look to enjoy in films. And yeah, I gave that a 1.5 out of 5. It wasn't really anything that I'll ever go back to, I don't think. The final film for the 1st of February was Dune. I finally watched Dune, or June. I don't know how to say it. My accent makes things weird sometimes. Also, my voice sounds a little weird. I am kind of ill at the minute. Just explaining that in advance so my voice doesn't seem like purposely all over the place. But I'm going to be real here. Maybe I'm being too harsh on it and I am going to go back to it after I've finished reading the book. I wasn't a big fan of Dune this time around. In fact, I was that little a fan of it that I gave it a 2 out of 5. And that got some choice criticisms on Twitter. But what would I be if not disappointing the masses? Skipping a few days, on the 4th of February, I went to go and see Jackass Forever in cinemas. I've never been someone that's avidly watched Jackass movies, and I've also never even seen any of the episodes of the TV series, but I really loved this movie. It was just a lot of dumb fun that I think anyone could probably sit down and have a good time with. I really enjoyed it, and I gave it a 4 star. Over the next 4 days, I ended up going to Netflix and watching a limited series called Stay Close that was recommended to me by a friend. Now, it was fine. It was nothing amazing. It was one of those shows that started off like really poor. The first 3 episodes didn't have me at all. But the middle of the season was really good and actually really engaging, and then by the end of it, it dips further again into this level of mediocrity that just makes it sort of disappointing. But I gave it a 3 stars. I didn't think it was the worst thing that I've ever watched. It just left itself with so much potential that it never tapped into. On the 9th, I watched Freaky for the second time. Just as good as the first time I watched it. I think this is a really good, campy horror film. Vince Vaughn is really great in it. Catherine Newton is also amazing in it. They both have to play 2 very different characters, and I think they do it really well. And I gave that a 4 star. I do think it's a ton of fun. On the 10th, I watched The Lighthouse for the first time, and I'm going to say right off the bat, I gave it a 3.5 stars, mainly because I need to watch it again to figure out what was happening, and also because it's gave me an irrational fear of lighthouses. On the 11th, I watched WandaVision, and I watched it in one sitting, because this was like the first day that I had on holiday, I believe, from work. So I had the whole week to myself. What am I going to do? I'm going to watch WandaVision. And WandaVision actually became, fun fact, the first 5-star review of February. Huzzah! Congratulations, WandaVision. Hope to see you at the Media 13 Awards. Spoiler? Probably not. We know how much I enjoyed it. On the 11th, I went back to the cinema again to see Jackass Forever. On the second time, I also gave it a 4 star. I think I enjoyed it just as much, if not that little bit more. On the 12th, I sat down to watch a Jim Carrey movie that I have never watched before, An Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and I was blown away at how good this was. I really enjoyed it, and I'm definitely going to go back around to watch it again real soon. On the 13th, I watched Batman Begins, because this was going to be where I started my Batman movies leading up to, obviously, the Batman coming out next month, or this month as you're watching this video now. So I watched Batman Begins, and this is my favourite of the Nolan trilogy. I have decided that this time. I gave this one an 8 out of 10. I think it slaps. I think it's one of the best comic book origin movies there is. On the 14th, I went to see Uncharted, and I gave it a 3.5 stars. Now, Uncharted was actually a lot of fun. I think in all these big series movies getting brought out, it's important to have these movies where you can more just have fun with it. Uncharted very much feels like the first video game movie that feels like a video game. And obviously you can use the excuse of, oh, Sonic or Detective Pikachu, but they didn't feel as if they were in their, respective in-game universes. Like obviously with Sonic being set in the real world, Detective Pikachu being set in this society where fucking I don't know what's happening in that film. It's been a while since I've watched it. Uncharted genuinely feels as though it's an Uncharted game, and I liked that. On the 15th, I went back to the cinema again and I watched Death on the Nile. It's better than the first movie in this series, which was, Murder on the Orient Express, which I thought was pretty bland. This one still isn't perfect, but I did enjoy it, significantly more. And I gave this one a 3.5. On the 17th, I watched Encanto on Disney Plus, and I'm going to be straight up transparent here. The only reason I watched this was because I needed a 5th nominee for the Best Animated Media in the Media 13 Awards, because I only had 4. So I thought, you know what, I'll watch Encanto, it can just be another one of the nominees. I feel like I've got my winner sorted out anyway. And holy shit, I fell in love. Encanto was absolutely amazing. I enjoyed the hell out of this movie. It's not at all structured like a normal movie. Like, it doesn't have that big final act. It doesn't have a big antagonist. There is no clear villain in this movie. There isn't even really a villain at all. And that is honestly only making the film better in my head. And I kind of want to watch it again, just mentioning it in this way. I gave Encanto a 4.5. Trust me, it did not stay like that. On the 18th, I watched The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the new film from Netflix, and I gave it a 2 out of 5. It wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen, but it's obviously far from being near any of the good things that I've seen. It was not a great movie. Like, you can obviously say, you're coming to this franchise for the kills. Yes, you're right, I'm coming to a Texas Chainsaw Massacre, thing for kills. I'm also going to a movie to see, at least a compelling story, a story that interests me somewhat, especially if you're trying to stretch it out for however long that film, like an hour and a half, just under an hour and a half. It did not grab me at all. I think the kills aside, even then some of them were just really, generic, and we've seen these sort of things before in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like, the film did nothing new. It was very derivative of this new sort of, bringing your original characters back. But it did it in all the wrong ways. I just don't think any decision made in that film was a good one. And I think this is an example of a franchise showing that it should have stayed dead. Moving on the 19th, I watched Encanto again, and this is where I gave it a 5-star rating, because my god, I love this movie too much. On the 21st, I went back to the cinema to watch Uncharted again, because I just had a compulsion to watch it again, and channel icon Reese had to go and see it, so I went with him. And this time I enjoyed it enough to scrape it just up to a 4-star. On the 23rd, I watched The Dark Knight. I'm kind of scared to say this on camera, to put it on the internet, but I gave it a 3-star. Now I know what you're thinking, Jordan, that's not even a bad rating, what are you on about? Well, the reason that I'm concerned is that everyone on the internet tends to view The Dark Knight as a masterpiece. They tend to say that Heath Ledger's Joker is the most compelling, villain performance of all time. And I'm here to tell you, I don't think any of that's true. I don't think The Dark Knight is a bad movie. I do not think Heath Ledger's performance is bad. I think they're both fine. In Heath Ledger's case, I think it's good. I think it's great. Not a bad movie. It's nowhere near a masterpiece either. It is just fine. On the 27th, I watched The Dark Knight Rises, and for a while this was my favourite of the Nolan trilogy, but this time it's fallen just below Batman Begins with a 3.5 star. Also on the 27th, I watched 1989's Batman starring Michael Keaton, because I do want to watch the other live action movies before the new one. And I actually really enjoyed this one. I gave it a 3.5 right off the bat, because I just loved how insanely goofy it was. And I followed that up today on the 28th with Batman Returns, which again, I didn't enjoy it quite as much, but I still gave it a 3.5. I still think it was a fun movie. It's a lower 3.5 than Batman 89, which was a higher 3.5. Will say, a lot of people told me Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman was great. I do think it was a bit too cheesy for my liking. But that has been everything I have watched in February of 2022. What have you been watching? What was your favourite first watch of this month? What was your favourite rewatch of this month? And what is the most controversial opinion that I have given in this review? I feel like I already know what it was, and it was like 30 seconds in. If you've enjoyed this episode of Last Month I Watched, feel free to like it, because it lets me know I'm doing something right with the content. And if you're new around here and don't want to miss next month's or the Media 13 Awards, you can subscribe so you never miss another video again. If you're feeling that stalkery, you can even put notifications on. I promise you, I'm not going to complain. I won't tell anyone. But that's been everything from me. I've been Jordan. I hope you're all having a fantastic day, and I'll see you all in the next one.